Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be giving you an update on that rainstorm along the east coast. We're going to be dealing with some areas getting up near 4 to 6 inches of rainfall, especially if you live along the coastal southeast. We're going to be timing the storm out for you guys, giving you all the information you need to know, so make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. Here's a look at the current National Weather Service page. You can see that we have a few red flag warnings scattered throughout parts of Oregon and Montana, with some more air quality alerts in through parts of the Rockies and also into the northern plains. We have some flood watches in effect for much of the Intermountain West and parts of the Rockies, and then we have some more heat advisories in effect for parts of the southern plains and then scattered throughout parts of the southeast, with a few excessive heat warnings in a little bit of Louisiana. We also have a few more flood watches in parts of Vermont and New Hampshire, and other than that, we don't have many other watches or warnings currently in place for today. Yesterday we had a high temperature of 110 degrees in Cooley Dam, Washington, and again they got up to 110 degrees there. Mount Washington, New Hampshire had the low temperature. They got down to 32 degrees, and again that's about 5 or 6,000 feet up in elevation. So that's why they were so cold relative to the surrounding areas. The highest rainfall report yesterday was in Knoxville, Iowa, where they got 3.6 inches of rain, and there were no snowfall reports as of yesterday. Here's a look at the current European model and what it's forecasting in terms of the rainfall and this rainstorm. So we're going to start off with this storm, which is off the east coast by this point. So this would be by later tonight. And we have the storm off the northeast and mid-Atlantic coast. This will be moving out further to the northeast and then eventually into the northern Atlantic. And as it does so, it'll clip parts of the northeast and then it'll move away very quickly. So it looks like this storm again is going to stay mostly offshore. There will be some rainfall if you live in the northeast for today, but we're going to be mainly focusing on the storm in the southeast, which is going to start off in the southeast. It'll kind of redevelop offshore of the Carolinas, and then it should move up the coast into parts of the mid-Atlantic, the northeast, and into southeastern Canada. So we're going to be talking about that as well, and that'll be later on in the video. Here's a look at for Monday morning. So this will be tomorrow morning. You can see that we have some scattered rainfall still left, and this is what will become our next storm in parts of the southeast. You can see that storm which was in the northeast is pretty much all gone by this point, and it's moving into areas like Nova Scotia and areas south of there. If we look at for Monday night, you can see that rain is continuing through parts of the southeast and the Gulf Coast. This is mostly thunderstorm activity, so not everywhere that's shaded in that green color will be seeing rainfall necessarily. It'll be a broad area of general thunderstorms. This will again eventually form up into more of an organized system. You're starting to see this turn less convective as we head into Tuesday morning. So parts of the southeast by this point are dealing with quite a bit of rainfall. You're dealing with light to moderate rainfall. And again, by this point, it's not so much in the form of thunderstorms. It's more of a broad area of rainfall. If we move on even further, here to be by Tuesday night, and you can see that now the storm is really starting to develop into a semi-nor'easter, or what could be a nor'easter, depending on how this tracks and how it sets up. So we have that storm in parts of the Carolinas. Again, this is going to be moving to the north and to the east. The big question is, does this go off to shore or off to sea, or does this kind of stay on land and move up the spine of the northeast? And that's still a question that we have to answer, and that's going to have big implications if this moves out to sea. Of course, a lot of areas will miss out on most of that rainfall. If it moves straight up through the central part of the northeast, then we're probably going to have a lot more rainfall centered around those areas, and we could be dealing with a little bit more in the way of flooding. If we look at for Wednesday morning, you can see that the storm is now into parts of eastern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia. You do see some heavier bands of rainfall starting to set up, and again, this would be by Wednesday morning. If we look at for Wednesday night, you can see that we have your first area of low pressure starting to move offshore. So this is one little area, this one little band of rainfall. That is a small low pressure that'll be moving out to the northeast. You're seeing a redeveloping low pressure down in the southeast, so it's still raining in these areas by Wednesday night. So it's been raining since Monday through Wednesday at this point, and it's even going to continue through Thursday in some parts of the Carolinas. So these areas are not going to get a break from the rainfall over the next couple of days. If we look at for Thursday morning, you can see that we have that storm now starting to push along into the into the east coast and into the northeast. And as it's doing so, it's bringing in some of that moderate to even heavy at times rainfall. If we move this on one more frame, you're going to see that by Friday morning, we have the storm moving through parts of Pennsylvania and then eventually up into parts of New England, where that low pressure is centered. You could be dealing with some gusty winds at times, so we're looking at maybe up near 25 miles per hour, but that's not really going to be the main concern. It's going to be mostly the rainfall that's coming with this that'll be the most in terms of the concern level. So we're dealing with most of the concern coming from the rain, not too much in the form of wind out of this storm. It's not well developed enough to really have any concerns about the wind damage that could come out of the storm. If we look at for Friday night, you can see that we have this storm in parts of New England still just kind of sitting there with that light to moderate rainfall, and then by Saturday in the later morning, we're going to be dealing with a storm moving out into parts of southeastern Canada. Not so much to really contend with after that. So it's going to move out into parts of eastern Canada as a weak storm. Just because it was moving through parts of the northeast, the mid-Atlantic, because it was on land for so long, it is going to eventually be broken up. So we're not going to be dealing with anything in eastern Canada that should be too noteworthy. It should be mostly just a light to moderate rainfall. Taking a look at the rainfall totals from this event, this would be through next Saturday. So we're going pretty much a full 5 to 7 days in terms of the rainfall totals on this map. In the green colors, that's where you're looking at a tenth of an inch to half an inch to an inch in the blues. If you're in that yellow color, that's an inch to about 2 inches, 2 to 5 inches in the orange and red colors. And then in the browns, that's where we're right around 5 to 7.5 inches. Once you get into those purple colors, that's where you're above 7.5 inches of rainfall. So a couple of things that I want to point out in parts of the in parts of the interior southeast, I guess you could say, and areas along the Gulf Coast, we're not dealing with as much rainfall, but you will still get some areas, especially along the coast, that will get maybe 1 to even 1.5 inches of rainfall. If you live in parts of the coastal southeast, this is really going to be the area that's going to get hammered with this storm and with all this rainfall. So you can see the entirety of the southeast, for the most part, is dealing with 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. But once you get into parts of the coastal Carolinas and into southern Georgia and northern Florida, this is where you're looking at really heavy rainfall totals. You're looking at some isolated spots getting 4 to 7 inches, and then you even see in some parts of North Carolina, even a little bit of South Carolina, maybe even for parts of Georgia and Florida, some areas getting more than that 7.5 inch mark, maybe even pushing closer to 10 inches, depending on how long that rainfall lasts. And it doesn't make sense when you it makes sense when you look at what happened throughout the week. We're dealing with rain, a little bit of rain for today, and some parts of tomorrow in those areas, and then you get a little bit of a break, and then you're right back with it, with the rain. That's going to go through Monday all the way to Thursday, even Friday in a few of those spots. And you even saw that once that storm was in the northeast and it was well away from the southeast coast, you were still dealing with some lingering pockets of rainfall in parts of the Carolinas disassociated from that storm. So you're still dealing with some of that rainfall, even though it's light, it is still kind of adding on to those rainfall totals. Moving on to parts of the mid-Atlantic, you can see that generally in parts of the mid-Atlantic, we're dealing with 1 to 3 inches of rainfall. You go further inland, and that's where you're dealing with less than an inch of rainfall. And then you move into the northeast, especially for areas like New England, and we're dealing with 1 to 3 inches of rainfall, especially within this thin stripe, which goes from New York all the way down to the Carolinas. Exactly where that stripe kind of goes through is going to be a big factor into who gets the most rainfall within this area. So we're going to have to track that. There's going to be on either side of that rain band 1 to 2 inches, and then within that rain band, that's where we're looking at 2 to 4 inches, maybe even close to 5 inches in a few of those spots. Here's a look at the upper air pattern to kind of break down why exactly this is happening. This would be for Tuesday of this week, and you can see that we have a big high pressure that's in the Atlantic. So this is going to be steering the storm somewhat like this. So this is what's creating that pattern that would allow some nor'easters or at least some coastal storms to develop. We also have that low pressure, which is associated with a big trough, which is dipping into the eastern United States. This is why it's relatively chilly in these areas for this week, and that's why we're in a bit of a cooler pattern. You will get warmer probably into the first 2 weeks of August, or actually probably the second week of August. I would say is probably going to be when you're going to get warmer, and then I think probably after the 15th or so, it probably will cool down once again. So as a general fact, and this is kind of a insight into what I'm thinking for the entire month of August, I think it'll probably be, on average, a bit of a cooler month in these spots, even though you will have some breaks of warmer and colder temperatures. Related to the storm, you can see, again, we have that trough in the east. This is what's carrying the storm. So your storm is on the lower edge of this trough right here, and as this trough swings across the eastern United States, this is going to propel the storm, and then it'll have to kind of move around this high pressure. As it does so, it'll be moving along and up the east coast, and that's why we're dealing with the storm moving in the way it does. If we didn't have this high pressure over here in the Atlantic, first of all, it would not stall out in parts of the southeast. This would be a maybe 12 to 36-hour event, and then it would just move straight offshore, most likely curving up a little bit, but you would have this moving out into the Atlantic and not staying over this same area. But because we have this high pressure so close to the shoreline, it's preventing this low pressure from moving from the southeast and moving into the Atlantic and kind of getting over with. And instead, it's going to stall out until this high pressure moves away just enough for it to move up into the northeast. So it's going to really stall out here for 3 or 4 days. And that's one of the reasons that we're going to be dealing with a lot of flooding, especially again in that coastal southeast area. That is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.